Hello and welcome to Richard August, the autistic Christian MGTOW, the red pill man who lights it up blue. This is today's reading from the Apocrypha text of my 1599 Geneva Bible. And today's reading shall be from 2 Maccabees chapters 10 through 12. And may God add his richest blessing to this reading of his holy word. 2 Maccabees chapter 10. Maccabeus now and his company, through the help of the Lord, won the temple in the city again, and destroyed the altars and chapels that the heathen had builded in the open places, and cleansed the temple, and made another altar, and burned stones, and took fire of them, and offered sacrifices and incense 2 years and 6 months after, and set forth the lamps and the showbread. When that was done, they fell down flat upon the ground, and besought the Lord that they might come no more into such troubles, but if they sinned any more against him, that he himself would chasten them with mercy, and that they might not be delivered to the blasphemous and barbarous nations. Now upon the same day that the strangers polluted the temple, on the very same day it was cleansed again, even the 25th day of the same month, which is Caslev. They kept 8 days with gladness, as in the Feast of the Tabernacles, remembering that not long afore they held the Feast of the Tabernacles, when they lived in the mountains and dens like beasts. And for the same cause they bare green boughs and fair branches and palms, and sang psalms unto him that had given them good success in cleansing his place. They ordained also by a common statute and decree that every year those days should be kept of the whole nation of the Jews. And this was the end of Antiochus, called Epiphanes. Now will we declare the acts of Antiochus Eupator, which was the son of this wicked man, gathering briefly the calamities of the wars that followed. For when he had taken the kingdom, he made one Lysias, which had been captain of the host in Phoenicia and Celesyria, ruler over the affairs of the realm. For Ptolemaeus, that was called Macron, proposed to do justice unto the Jews for the wrong that had been done unto them, and went about to behave himself peaceably with them. For the which cause he was accused of his friends before Eupator, and was called ofttimes traitor, because he had left Cyprus, that Philometor had committed unto him, and came to Antiochus Epiphanes. Therefore, seeing that he was no more in estimation, he was discouraged, and poisoned himself, and died. But when Gorgias was governor of the same places, he entertained strangers, and made war ofttimes against the Jews. Moreover, the Idumeans that held the strongholds, which were meet for their purpose, troubled the Jews, and by receiving them that were driven from Jerusalem, took in hand to continue war. Then they that were with Maccabeus made prayers, and besought God that he would be their helper. And so they fell upon the strongholds of the Idumeans, and assaulted them sore, that they won the places, and slew all that fought against them on the wall, and killed all that they met with, and slew no less than 20,000. And because certain, which were no less than 9,000, were fled unto 2 strong castles, having all manner of things convenient to sustain the siege, Maccabeus left Simon and Joseph and Zacchaeus also, and those that were with them, which were enough to besiege them, and departed to those places which were more necessary. Now they that were with Simon, being led with covetousness, were entreated for money, though certain of them that were in the castle, and took 70,000 drachmas, and let some of them escape. But when it was told Maccabeus what was done, he called the governors of the people together, and accused those men that they had sold their brethren for money, and let their enemies go. So he slew them when they were convicted of treason, and immediately won the 2 castles. And having good success, as in all the wars that he took in hand, he slew in the 2 castles more than 20,000. Now Timotheus, whom the Jews had overcome afore, gathered an army of strangers of all sorts, and brought a great troop of horsemen out of Asia to win Jewry by strength. But when he drew near, Maccabeus and they that were with him turned to pray unto God, and sprinkled earth upon their heads, and girded their reins with sackcloth, and fell down at the foot of the altar, and besought the Lord to be merciful to them, and to be an enemy to their enemies, and to be an adversary to their adversaries, as the law declareth. So after the prayer, they took their weapons and went on further from the city, and when they came near to the enemies, they took heed to themselves. And when the morning appeared, they both joined together. The one part had the Lord for their refuge and pledge of prosperity and noble victory, and the other took courage as a guide of the war. But when the battle waxed strong, there appeared unto the enemies from heaven 5 comely men upon horses with bridles of gold. And 2 of them led the Jews, and took Maccabeus betwixt them, and covered him on every side with their weapons, and kept him safe, but shot darts and lightnings against the enemies, so that they were confounded with blindness, and beaten down and full of trouble. There were slain of footmen 20,000, and 500 and 600 horsemen. As for Timotheus himself, he fled unto Gaziah, which was called a very strong hold, wherein Carius was captain. But Maccabeus and his company laid siege against the fortresses with courage for 4 days. And they that were within, trusting to the height of the place, blasphemed exceedingly, and spake horrible words. Nevertheless, upon the 5th day in the morning, 20 young men of Maccabeus' company, whose hearts were inflamed because of the blasphemies, came unto the wall, and with bold stomachs smote down those that they met. Others also that climbed up upon the engines of war against them that were within set fire upon the towers, and burnt those blasphemers quick with the fires that they had made. And others brake up the gates, and received the rest of the army, and took the city. And having found Timotheus that was crept into a cave, they killed him, and Carius his brother with Apollophanes. When this was done, they praised the Lord with psalms, and sang thanksgiving, which had done so great things for Israel, and given them the victory. 2 Maccabees chapter 11. Very shortly after this, Lysias the king's steward was, and a kinsman of his, which had the governance of the affairs, took sore displeasure for the things that were done. And when he had gathered about 80,000 with all the horsemen, he came against the Jews, thinking to make the city an habitation of the Gentiles. And the temple would he have to get money by, like the other temples of the heathen, for he would sell the priest's office every year. And thus being puffed up in his mind, because of the great number of footmen and thousands of horsemen, and in his 80 elephants, he came into Judea, and drew near to Bethsura, which was a castle of defense, 5 furlongs from Jerusalem, and laid sore siege unto it. But when Maccabeus and his company knew that he besieged the holds, they and all the people made prayers with weeping and tears before the Lord, that he would send a good angel to deliver Israel. And Maccabeus himself first of all took weapons, exhorting the other that they would jeopardy themselves together with him to help their brethren. So they went forth together with a courageous mind. And as they were there besides Jerusalem, there appeared before them upon horseback a man in white clothing, shaking his harness of gold. Then they praised the merciful God altogether, and took heart, insomuch that they were ready not only to fight with men, but with the most cruel beasts, and to break down walls of iron. Thus they marched forward in array, having an helper from heaven, for the Lord was merciful unto them. And running upon their enemies like lions, they slew 11,000 footmen and 1,600 horsemen, and put all the other to flight. Many of them also being wounded escaped naked, and Lysias himself fled away shamefully, and so escaped. Who, as he was a man of understanding, considering what loss he had had, and knowing that the Hebrews could not be overcome because the Almighty God helped them, sent unto them, and promised that he would consent to all things which were reasonable, and persuade the king to be their friend. Maccabeus agreed to Lysias' requests, and having respect in all things to the commonwealth, and whatsoever Maccabeus wrote unto Lysias concerning the Jews, the king granted it. For there were letters written unto the Jews from Lysias, containing these words, Lysias, unto the people of the Jews, sendeth greeting. John and Absalom, which were sent from you, delivered me the things that you demand by writing, and required me to fulfill the things that they had declared. Therefore what things soever were meet to be reported to the king himself, I have declared them, and he granted that that was possible. Therefore, if ye behave yourselves as friends toward his affairs, hereafter also I will endeavor myself to do you good. As concerning these things, I have given commandment to these men, and to those whom I send unto you, to commune with you of the same particularly. Fare ye well, the 148 year, the 24th day of the month Dioscorinthios. Now the king's letter contained these words: King Antiochus unto his brother Lysias sendeth greeting. Since our Father is translated unto the gods, our will is that they which are in our realm live quietly, that every man may apply his own affairs. We understand also that the Jews would not consent to our Father for to be brought unto the custom of the Gentiles, but would keep their own manner of living, for the which cause they require of us that we would suffer them to live after their own laws. Wherefore our mind is that this nation shall be in rest, and have determined to restore to them their temple, that they may be governed according to the custom of their fathers. Thou shalt do well therefore to send unto them, and grant them peace, that when they are certified of our mind, they may be of good comfort, and cheerfully go about their own affairs. And this was the king's letter unto the nation. King Antiochus unto the elders of the Jews, and to the rest of the Jews sendeth greeting. If ye fare well, we have our desire. We are also in good health. Menelaus declared unto us that your desire was to return home, and to apply your own business. Wherefore those that will depart, we give them free liberty unto the 30th day of the month of Pentecost, that the Jews may use their own manner of living and laws, like as afore, and none of them by any manner of ways to have harm for things done by ignorance. I have sent also Menelaus to comfort you. Fare ye well. The 148th year, the 15th day of the month of Pentecost. The Romans also sent a letter containing these words: Quintus Memmius and Titus Manilius, ambassadors of the Romans, unto the people of the Jews send greeting. The things that Lysias, the king's kinsman, hath granted you, we grant the same also. But concerning that which he shall report unto the king, send hither some with speed, when ye have considered the matter diligently, that we may consult thereupon as shall be best for you, for we must go into Antiochia. And therefore make haste and send some men, that we may know your mind. Farewell, this 148th year and 15th day of the month of Pentecost. 2 Maccabees, chapter 12. When these covenants were made, Lysias went unto the king, and the Jews tilled their ground. But the governors of the places, as Timotheus and Apollonius, the son of Genneus, and Jeronimus, and also Demophon, and besides them Nicanor, the governor of Cyprus, would not live in rest and peace. They of Joppa also did such a vile act. They prayed the Jews that dwelt among them to go with their wives and children into the ships, which they had prepared as though they had aught them none evil will. And so by the common advice of the city they obeyed them, and suspect nothing. But when they were gone forth into the deep, they drowned no less than 200 of them. Now when Judas knew of this cruelty he showed against his nation, he commanded those men that were with him to make them ready. And having called upon God, the righteous judge, he went forth against the murderers of his brethren, and set fire in the haven by night, and burnt the ships. And those that fled thence he slew. And when the city was shut up, he departed as though he would come again, and root out all of them of the city of Joppa. But when he perceived that the Ammonites were minded to do in like manner unto the Jews which dwelt among them, he came upon the Ammonites by night, and set fire in the haven with the navy, so that the light of the fire was seen at Jerusalem upon 240 furlongs. Now when they were gone from thence 9 furlongs in their journey toward Timotheus, about 5,000 men of foot and 5,000 horsemen of the Arabians set upon him. So the battle was sharp, but it prospered with Judas through the help of God. The nomads of Arabia, being overcome, besought Judas to make peace with them, and promised to give him certain cattle, and to help him in other things. And Judas, thinking that they should indeed be profitable concerning many things, granted them peace, whereupon they shook hands, and so they departed to their tents. Judas also assaulted a city called Caspis, which was strong by reason of a bridge, and fenced round about with walls, and had divers kinds of people dwelling therein. So they that were within it put such trust in the strength of the walls, and in store of victuals, that they were the slacker in their doings, reviling them that were with Judas, and reproaching them. Yea, they blasphemed, and spake such words as were not lawful. But Maccabeus' soldiers, calling upon the great prince of the world, which without any instruments or engines of war did cast down the walls of Jericho in the time of Jesus, gave a fierce assault against the walls, and took the city by the will of God, and made an exceeding great slaughter, insomuch that a lake of 2 furlongs broad, which lay thereby, seemed to flow with blood. Then departed they from thence 750 furlongs, and came to Sharaka unto the Jews that are called Tibianae. But they found not Timotheus there, for he was departed from thence, and had done nothing, and had left a garrison in a very strong hold. But Dositheus and Sosipater, which were captains with Maccabeus, went forth, and slew those that Timotheus had left in the fortress, more than 10,000 men. And Maccabeus prepared, and ranged his army by bands, and went courageously against Timotheus, which had with him 120,000 men of foot, and 2,500 horsemen. When Timotheus had knowledge of Judas coming, he sent the women, and children, and other baggage afore unto a fortress called Carnion. For it was hard to besiege, and uneasy to come unto, because of the straits on all sides. But when Judas's first band came in sight, the enemies were smitten with fear, and a trembling was among them through the presence of him that seeth all things, insomuch that they, fleeing one here and another there, were oft times hurt by their own people, and wounded with the points of their own swords. But Judas was very earnest in pursuing, and slew those wicked men, yea, he slew 30,000 men of them. Timotheus also himself fell into the hands of Dositheus, and Sosipater, whom he besought with much craft to let him go with his life, because he had many of the Jews' parents and the brethren of some of them, which if they put him to death should be despised. So when he had assured them with many words, and promised that he would restore them without hurt, they let him go for the health of their brethren. Then went Maccabeus toward Carmen and Adargadion, and slew 25,000 persons. And after that he had chased away and slain them, Judas removed the host toward Ephron, a strong city, wherein was Lysias and a great multitude of all nations, and the strong young men kept the walls, defending them mightily. There was also great preparations of engines of war and darts. But when they had called upon the Lord, which with his power breaketh the strength of the enemies, they won the city, and slew 25,000 of them that were within. From thence went they to Scythopolis, which lieth 600 furlongs from Jerusalem. But when the Jews which dwelt there testified that the Scythopolitans dealt lovingly with them and entreated them kindly in the time of their adversity, they gave them thanks, desiring them to be friendly still unto them, and so they came unto Jerusalem as the Feast of Weeks approached. And after the feast called Pentecost, they went forth against Gorgias, the governor of Idumea, who came out with 3,000 men of foot and 400 horsemen. And when they joined together, a few of the Jews were slain. And Dositheus, one of the Bacchanors, which was on horseback, and a mighty man, took Gorgias, and laid hold of his garment, and drew him by force, because he would have taken the wicked man alive. But an horseman of Thracia fell upon him, and smote off his shoulder, so that Gorgias fled into Maresa. And when they that were with Esserin had foughten long, and were weary, Judas called upon the Lord, that he would show himself to be their helper, and captain of the field. And then he began in his own language, and sung psalms with a loud voice, insomuch that straightways he made them that were about Gorgias to take their flight. So Judas gathered his host, and came into the city of Odola. And when the seventh day came, they cleansed themselves as the custom was, and kept the Sabbath in the same place. And upon the day following, as necessity required, Judas and his company came to take up the bodies of them that were slain, and to bury them with their kinsmen in their fathers' graves. Now under the coats of every one that was slain they found jewels that had been consecrated to the idols of the Ammonites, which thing is forbidden the Jews by the law. Then every man saw that this was the cause wherefore they were slain. And so every man gave thanks unto the Lord, the righteous judge, which had opened the things that were hid. And they gave themselves to prayer and besought him, that they should not utterly be destroyed for the fault committed. Besides that, noble Judas exhorted the people to keep themselves from sin, for so much as they saw before their eyes the things which came to pass by the sin of those that were slain. And having made a gathering through the company, sent to Jerusalem about 2,000 drachmas of silver to offer a sin offering, doing very well and honestly that he thought of the resurrection. For if he had not hoped that they which were slain should rise again, it had been superfluous and vain to pray for the dead. And therefore he perceived that there was great favor laid up for those that died godly. It was in holy and good thought. So he made a reconciliation for the dead, that they might be delivered from sin. Thank you for watching and listening. This has been Richard August, the autistic Christian MGTOW, the red pill man who lights it up blue. This has been today's reading of the Apocrypha text of my 1599 Geneva Bible. I invite you to leave a tip in the tip jar on the top of my BitChute channel, rather. I also invite you to like and share this video with others and to subscribe to my video channel. And as well, I invite you to come back tomorrow as we finish the Apocrypha totally. The 13th through the 15th chapters of 2nd Maccabees and the prayer of Manasseh.